It's the HBO show Watchmen, and it's getting a decent amount of buzz. So, how was it? Hey there, this is Perch. I watched the Watchmen series premiere. This is a nine episode series on HBO designed to fill the gap between Game of Thrones and no Game of Thrones when they're just trying to get back into the streaming war. You know, something crazy actually about HBO. So, in a couple short weeks, I think 3 weeks, 2 weeks, we get the His Dark Materials premiere. Why put two highly publicized, big time shows on right next to each other? What comes after that? I mean, Westworld Series 3 is sometime in 2020. It seems like they're going to have a dead zone right when they don't need it. But I guess they will be having both these out during the premiere of Netflix and Apple Plus and Disney Plus, and why not? Sure. Anyway, but to Watchmen. Um, you know what's so amazing to me about this show is that it feels like a lot of people on all fronts missed the point of the show. So let me cut to like the end of the review. It wasn't great. It was okay. It was fine. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was a masterpiece of cinematic storytelling. I don't think it was a perfect allegory for our dangerous times. And I don't think it was absolute garbage or SJW nonsense designed to further stoke racial divisions, whatever. It's none of those things. But it is trying to make a point about a couple things. And you get it if you read the comic and you understood the message in the comic. And if you watch the show carefully, just as if you were watching a show, not as if you were trying to connect it to Trump's America. So let me explain a little bit. The show, Watchmen, is intended as for what it's worth, kind of unofficial sequel. At the very end of the show, it credits the creators, Dave Gibbons, and that's it. Alan Moore doesn't want his name attached to any of this, but it is a sequel to the original Watchmen comic, and I can say that with certainty because this show and what goes on here picks up on elements that about, I don't know, 15, there's probably, somebody could give me an exact time frame, but several years after the conclusion of the comic. If you just watch the movie Watchmen, then parts of this will be confusing, particularly around the giant squid and the raining squid and all that stuff. But if you read the comic, this is a good spiritual successor to the comic. A lot of elements from the Minutemen to all sorts of different aspects of the show, tiny Easter eggs throughout. This is for what it's worth, an authentic sequel, and it carries on several of the themes of the comic. Now, if you believed that the comic Watchmen, Rorschach was a hero, if you believe that was a heroic character, then you've made a mistake, and it's a mistake that even Alan Moore would correct you on. Rorschach was intended to be somewhat of a parody of Batman, but more than that, was intended to show the violence for violence sake, that putting on a mask and taking justice into your own hands and having your own moral code and your own belief system and just inflicting that on other people in violent ways might seem noble, but wasn't. I mean, the whole purpose of that character was to really kind of highlight the fact that that type of violence is self-destructive, goes nowhere, and is fraught with problems. And so in the show, where we have it is it picks up, we get a brief flashback to what I believe is the worst kind of race massacre of the modern times. I mean, not, you have to go back to things pre-19th century, but it opened with what was the 1921 Tulsa race riot, which is a fancy way of saying that a bunch of black people got killed by a mob. So I don't really, race riot, it makes it kind of sound like people were after some TVs. That's not the case. What's curious about that topic in terms of American history is that's one that's kind of ignored, shuffled aside. Nobody really reports on it. It was kind of amusing over the last 24 hours to see a bunch of websites go, the race riot you never heard about. It's like you're a news agency. You could have told people about this. You didn't you didn't have to wait for an HBO show to come out to suddenly remember this pretty horrific event. Anyway, a number of black people were killed by kind of angry white people, and it was and pretty nasty what went on there. So the show opened there, but it's really kind of as meant to be an informative kind of moment around justice and kind of escaping that crime and people out of control. And in the original Watchmen comic, the backdrop to it was that the United States and Russia, Soviet Union, were on the brink of nuclear war. And it was going to happen, and it was only a matter of time before one side or the other created mutually assured destruction of raining nuclear bombs down around the world and basically ending life as we know it. That led to Adrian Vent's plan of basically creating this faux alien invasion, in this case, a giant squid monster that murdered millions of people in New York, but united the world against a common enemy, the enemy of space monsters, and that saved the world. And that is a key component to this series as well, as we've seen kind of this world on the brink. So you have racial tensions certainly being examined in this show, but it's not just racial tensions. It's intending to still showcase what is violence, where does it lead, how do people interact with each other, and where the tragedy of people who are convinced in their hearts that they are right, whether it's about race, whether it's about economics, whether it's about alien monsters, whether it's about the way to fight crime and the folly of those kinds of activities. And so, as the show kind of progresses, we've learned that the police wear masks to protect their identities. There's guns are outlawed and on lockdown. We've got President for Life, Robert Redford, which leads to the tongue-in-cheek Redford-ations as a pun on reparations. He is the ultra liberal president, and at one point the head cop turns on the radio and he hears about the angry talk show host talking about how he's a fake cowboy. That's kind of a reference a little bit to Ronald Reagan. In the comic, they were talking about Robert Redford being the next president, again as a reference to Ronald Reagan, because in the comic, Nixon had basically done away with term limits. So again, this is not today's America. And if David Lindemoff, the creator, believes this is today's America, he's deluded. But that's not the show that was filmed. It's not the show that was written. This is a different show. Now, what's curious is you see these people online. You see a lot of reviews going, "Oh, it was so cathartic, so wonderful to see the Sister Midnight really take it to those white supremacists. Wasn't it wonderful to watch her just bloody up and beat and punch and just really hurt these racists, and really taking some delight in it." What's funny, or not really funny, what's ironic about that is the original comic, I should say, it was trying to showcase how violence, whether it was through Rorschach or through any of the various characters, was wrong, where that violence breeds more violence. And so to watch a bunch of people go, "Oh, thank goodness, we're finally shining a light on white supremacy, and it was so much fun to see that Sister Midnight character really beat the hell out of racists." That's not, again, it's not necessarily the message that that was a spirit, certainly of the original comic. I can't speak to the heart of Lindemoff, who did this show, and what HBO is trying to do. But either the people watching it are a little bit deluded, or the people creating it and the people watching it are a little bit deluded. The goal here is not violence. And I do believe that the writers of the show understand this, because they indicate throughout many different little small lessons throughout the book that violence breeds violence, that going in and these ugly encounters are terrible, including even the very first shot of the film where the little girl, or the little boy, sorry, is watching the movie and getting the scene of "There will be no mob justice today, trust in the law." And so, granted, there's this hypocrisy there of trust in the law is what's going on the screen, while meanwhile Tulsa is getting just destroyed by people in this race riot. And so that's meant to draw a little bit of a parallel. But the lesson, I don't believe, and shouldn't be, hey, this is why the idealized cowboy in the beginning was foolish, and in the real world, we should just beat up and murder everyone. That's not the intention. Now, does that mean that I'm saying, hey, these white supremacists, these racist characters are sympathetic? No, absolutely not. They're written to be terrible people, and they are terrible people. And they are definitely going with a little bit of the, backed into a corner out of resentment. They've turned to violence and trying to take back their world. They've also adopted the Rorschach mask as kind of that same message of people who are trying to take law into their own hands and are misguided and wrong about it. The folly of trusting only in your own ideas. But this is an interesting show. It's stylistically done. I think again, in the comic, Dave Gibbons, Alan Moore did a really wonderful job of showing that the violence wasn't pretty, that none of this was necessarily good artistically. They showed that. Unfortunately, in this show, when whoever it might be is having a good old-fashioned brawl and punch-out, the music cranks up and we get the cool camera angles, and it's like, wow, look at how cool that beating is. And that's, again, we're making the violence look a little bit too awesome, which is not really the spirit of the original book. But who knows? This isn't the original comic. It is something else. Like I said, I think a bunch of people watched this or maybe half watched this or didn't watch it at all and had one of two gut reactions. Either it's, nut my Watchmen, and why are we going back to Trump? I hate it. Or, oh man, it's so good to see white supremacists get the crap beat out of them. I love it. Both of those takes are kind of a disservice to the whole show, which actually does have some interesting elements to it. Other things that went on, I've seen people say, does it rain squid? It does. That's, another nod to the kind of squid monster that was created at the end that was part of Adrian Vent's plan. Who was the old guy that was Vent? I'm sure I'm not saying the name right. Tired. It's been a long day. Where, was the 7th Cavalry part of the original Watchmen? No, but it is a reference to George Custer, who died in the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is also why that's the code name for a police shooting. That's where all that comes in. Does anybody in the show exhibit superpowers? Well, not yet. So far, it's all down to earth, which is, again, kind of how the original comic was by and large. They're not superpowered people. The one exception is, where is Dr. Manhattan? We see a brief sign of him that maybe he's on Mars, or maybe not. Maybe that's old footage. There's some indication that maybe the old black guy in the wheelchair is actually Dr. Manhattan observing things from that position. I think that's a pretty good theory. I think that's an excellent theory, actually. And it gets over having this big, muscular, naked dude walk around in the show. Although it does have an in for nudity in the ratings. So that Dr. Manhattan penis is coming, guys. It's coming. Last bit is, like I said, there's a bunch of little things there for the comic. If you read the comic and you really enjoyed the comic, then the show is probably worth a watch. If for no other reason, then you'll probably get a lot of the references, and you'll probably like it better than the general people who didn't necessarily read the comic very closely or have just a passing knowledge of Watchmen. If you didn't really pay attention to it, then this show might irritate you if you love Alan Moore and believe his work is sacred, or if you just are tired of people talking about Trump allegories. That's probably tired too. But if you really read through the comic, read it several times, enjoyed it, got into the depth of it, chances are you're going to enjoy at least parts of this, because there are a lot of nods to it. It is a continuation of that world. Put it this way: if you read the comic, really liked it, and then were pretty pissed off at the Snyder version of the movie and the things it cut and changed, particularly the ending, then you're probably going to like this, because it does kind of resume the comic book, the Watchmen comic graphic novel, however you say it, as canon. And so that's probably a good thing for people if that's you. Again, there's plenty to either like or dislike about this. I think if you're just going based on online, please don't pay too much attention to the shrill, this is about racism, that's terrible or that's wonderful, depending on which site you're looking at. Yes, clearly racism has a big play in this. It was the opening scene. It's definitely going to be the thing they're going to explore a little bit through this season about how racism, but more importantly, how fear drives people and kind of what they get up to. And the old battle was between Russia and the United States and nuclear winter, and this one's more about race and what happens when the America is divided, which a lot of people keep talking about for our current society and our current moment in time. And that's where I think it's just a matter of we gotta move on and look at other things. Anyway, that's what I think. Did you watch the show? Did you like it? Did you it's just trash from day one to day end? I have a feeling this show is going to have pretty polarizing viewpoints for people who watch it. Not going to be a lot of people who are just either in or out. It's either going to be, yeah, I liked it, okay. I'd be surprised if anyone loved it, truly loved it, other than, hey, I didn't really pay attention, but I saw my racist getting beat up, so I'm happy to see him get beat up. I think there are those people, but putting them aside, I'd be surprised if there's really very many I absolutely love it Perch takes on this. I think there's going to be a lot of, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm curious to see where it's going. It's good. Why not? Something to watch. Not bad. And then I think there will be a lot of absolutely, I hate it. No, 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 a million times no. I don't think it's that bad. That's just me. Was it you? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Perch. Tell me where I'm wrong. Happy to be wrong. This, like anything, you're going to have your own opinion. You're going to like it or hate it, but do either like it or hate it for your own viewing, for your own opinion, not what you hear online, because there's a lot of really bizarre takes on this particular show out there right now. Anyway, thanks for listening.